Tell me this isn't a little bit weird. Washington state Democrats propose replacing the term sex offender to advance a person-first approach. So, which means is a bill, House Bill 2177, to replace the term sex offender with sex offense in the sex offenders policy. This change aims to shift towards a person-first approach, which the bill allowing level 3 sex offenders, the most dangerous, to serve on the board alongside 6 crime victims. Let me read this to you again.
Please.
Which means a level 3 sex offenders, okay? This bill allows level 3 sex offenders, the most dangerous ones, to serve on the board alongside sex crime victims, okay? State Representative Tara Simmons, a Democrat and former felon, supports the bill, believing that sex offenders have invaluable information to share. SOPB Chair Brad Merrihew also backs the proposal, welcoming the inclusion of voice that provide a reality check in public policy. Republican State Representative Dan Griffey opposes the measure, questioning why the board should have a convicted sex offender as a member. The bill follows previous efforts in Washington to release sexually violent predators and place them in less restrictive alternative near childcare facilities. Tom, is this like a... So, by the way, again, do you read this and you say, are these guys serious? Tom, what are your thoughts on this?
These legislatures in Washington State have just lost their frickin' mind. There's no sense of logic in this. There's no sense of... You read this and you say, where's the logic? Okay, you say, okay, even though I disagree with him, where's he coming from and what does he think is really going to happen? You know, there are a lot of things. It's like the Treasury Department worked with counterfeiters. There's a whole movie, Catch Me If You Can, that talks about how the Treasury Department...
Frank Abagnale.
Yeah, took a guy who was a counterfeiter and a financial felon, and he eventually consulted, you know, he got his life clean. He had to get clean. He had no way to be employed to do anything. And he told them, this is how these crimes are committed. And it was incredibly helpful, and it created banking security things. There's one thing to do that, to take criminals who are demonstrated that they have been, you know, I don't want to say healed, but they got their life together and stuff, and they come back and say, hey, here's your leaks in the system where, you know, people like what I used to do, where we can get access to your kids. That's helpful. Not on the board, serving on the board, and not in a less restrictive alternative near a child care facility? Near a child care facility? Are you kidding me? I don't understand it. I'm just trying to find the logic in this, and it's just State Representative Tara Simmons, a Democrat and former felon. Hey, look, there's hope for Trump to be elected. You know, so she's a former felon supporting the bill. So what I see here, I see just a lack of logic. You can use former criminals to help you find leaks and to make things safe and change in the future. You can do that, but putting them on the board and then giving them, you know, actual access, this to me is just lunacy.
Adam.
Yeah, I mean, you took the words right out of my mouth. I actually had the pleasure of meeting Frank Abagnale at a meeting a handful of years ago. If you're not familiar with who this guy is, Leonardo DiCaprio played him in Catch Me If You Can. And he told his story about basically running away as a teenager and check fraud and wire fraud and cashing checks and did all this. And he knew the ins and outs of what it was to do money laundering and check fraud and everything like that. And then Tom Hanks in the movie basically Catch Me If You Can tried to catch him. And there was that whole cat and mouse game. But basically he ended up becoming an informant for the FBI. And we've seen this a million times with the mafia, people basically informing, and you know, we don't want to go down that path, understand like that. We've also seen people like former ISIS members that come out and basically inform level-headed democracies. This is what's going on over there. So that's, you know, if I can just try to spin this in a positive light, which is very hard to do in this situation, that's what I'd like to believe is happening here. Hey, here's how us sickos think. Hey, here's us weirdos are looking for. Because we saw the Sound of Freedom. We know what's going on. So if we can utilize these sickos to help catch more sickos, great. But some of these stories are not adding up right here.
And I think any time that they would like to replace terms, to me, like updating terms like pedophile, they change it to minor attracted person.
Right.
You're a pedophile. Stop trying to soften the language, because when you soften the language, it doesn't make the act any less crazy. Like, you're a pedophile. Because when I hear map, I'm like, oh, it's just a map. No. You're a pedophile, and you have to be separated from society. I'm sick and tired of the language changing, because that's the problem. The culture changes the language, but the person is still there, and they shouldn't be in the public.
Well, it all comes down to not hurting people's feelings, despite the fact that they're freaking pedophiles.
I don't give a shit about your feelings.
Exactly.
If you're a pedophile, you belong in jail.
We did a story 2 weeks ago that fat people, they're getting 2 free seats on a plane because they're no longer obese, they're persons of size.
Yeah.
So they don't want to offend the fat people out there. Make them pay double.
When you worry about terms, you're back to worry about feelings. The point Adam made about feelings about 15 minutes ago, and he's absolutely right. You're not a thief. You're a non-permission borrower. Right. I mean, what are we going to do? Are we going to take everything that we have because we have feelings? We don't like the way the term feels. Well, look, if you don't like the way, what do they teach you? I've been part of, I'm going to say this carefully. I've been part of recovery sessions where I was invited to come support someone who is in recovery. And one of the first things they teach you is to not soften it. And at the beginning of these sessions, I sat in this back row, and they all walk in, they stood up and they stated their name, and they say, I am an alcoholic. And then they sit down. And then one of the guys stood up and he said, I am an alcoholic, and I seriously have injured the relationships in my family. And he sat down. He apparently he's not supposed to or doesn't have to say the other part of it, but he said it bluntly. Why? Because he wanted to accept responsibility and accountability for what he was, and he's there in a group to get encouragement to go forward. And if we turn this into feelings, that feels bad, then really what you're doing is you're just moving accountability off of the person who has done things in society called criminals, whether it's a misdemeanor or a felon. You committed a crime, and you're softening it, and you're just taking the accountability out of society.
Great point, Tom.
So if you like this clip and you want to watch another one, click right here. And if you want to watch the entire podcast, click right here.